All right, let's get to love-hate. Start off with the quarterbacks. And Matthew, I think...
And we should, just to reset,
Are
love-hate.
you going to explain it?
Yeah, but hang on.
It's year 98.
We're doing it
love-hate.
before years.
It's a different love-hate than normal, though, boys. It is love-hate here is just about the NFL draft. Players whose fantasy stock improved as a result of what happened during the NFL draft, they are loves. Players whose fantasy stock went down as a result of the NFL draft, they are hates. These are not generally love-hates for the season. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I just want to, I think that's an important clarification.
Yes.
Jay.
No, well clarified.
You give our audience too much credit.
Yeah.
I do not.
A-plus clarification and A-plus draft for
Yes, sir.
Caleb Williams in terms of adding weapons. The Bears, they select Colson Loveland, 10th overall, Luther Burden III, 39th overall, after really fortifying the offensive line in free agency. And Caleb Williams, he headlines the love list now.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's it, right? I mean, so it's not only adding Burden and Loveland, who you've already heard Ben Johnson talk about how much anticipation he has. We saw what Laporta did in his rookie year with the Lions and Ben Johnson calling the plays. But you mentioned not only did they draft the two tackles, but Joe Thuney, Jonah Jackson. That might be the best offensive line in football. It's certainly the most improved.
Right.
I think you can certainly argue it is the most improved from last year to this year. And what is Caleb? One of the issues, we saw some brilliance from Caleb Williams last year, but I think one of the challenges was held onto the ball a little bit too long. He's so good off schedule, but held on the ball a little bit too long. But you give him a little bit more time to throw to DJ Moore, to Rome Odunze, to now Colston Loveland, to Luther Burden, to Cole Kmet, to a couple of running backs out of the backfield. I think Caleb Williams is somebody who saw his fantasy stock rise the most at the quarterback position out of the NFL draft.
Yeah, go ahead, Jay.
Did you change your evaluation of him as a player a great deal off of what he showed last season?
With Caleb?
Yeah.
Well, I think when you look at it, he just needed some structure in the offense. He needs to adapt to the structure, too. That's my biggest problem with him is that even when you go back to college, he's a guy that likes to play backyard football a lot because he's just so talented at it. But Ben Johnson's a great hire because Ben Johnson's excellent at establishing a play-action structure, get 12 personnel going, which is why they take Colston Loveland to add to that tight end room. And these two guys, to me, help me kind of mitigate some of his issues, right, in different ways. Loveland, in my opinion, is excellent at working with his quarterback when the play breaks down. So those moments when he does hold the ball is a moment where Loveland is the guy that's that big body target, good catch radius, excellent hands. On the flip side of it, Luther Burden's the guy that you throw the quick game to because he's so good after the catch. So naturally, by scheme, get the ball out of Caleb Williams' hands to a guy. And they got one of DJ Moore, but Luther Burden can do that as well. Now it's kind of difficult to divvy up where you're garnering the attention to. Burden is so good after the catch. So the balance, a quick game, but also a big target in Loveland for when the play breaks down is going to make the best version of Williams in year two.
Yep. It's kind of crazy, Connor, that Baker Mayfield is now this incredibly high floor quarterback, given that he literally played for the Rams a couple of years ago, and now after
and the Panthers in the same season.
And the Panthers, he's given up on by multiple teams. The Browns obviously moving on as well, but passing touchdown leaders since the 2023 season, Baker Mayfield, first overall with 69 passing touchdowns ahead of Jared Goff, Lamar Jackson, and Joe Burrow. What do you think, how will his stock change, Connor, based off of, obviously Liam Cohen moves on, but they add Emeka Egbuka in the draft?
Well, it raises the floor is the most important point. When you look at Baker Mayfield, he's a guy that thrives based on situation, which is okay. You should want better talent around you. Obviously, the problem we have with older wide receivers, as great as they are, Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, is that older wide receivers often get hurt. What Mike Evans has been able to do at his age, and he's banged up throughout the week, but is unbelievable. Emeka Egbuka and even Jalen McMillan there in year two now raises the floor. It makes this wide receiver room injury-proof, that if you lose one of those veterans, you have people that can adequately step into the role, and that's going to help Baker Mayfield's floor and ceiling as well. So Baker Mayfield, I think, is one of the guys in fantasy drafts that when you take him, you just feel so confident in what you're getting, where there's a lot more variance with other guys like Caleb Williams.
Yeah, the other thing about this is, so we obviously know Liam Cohen now in Jacksonville, but Josh Grizzard's going to be the new offense coordinator. He was the passing game coordinator. That's going to be a similar playbook here. And you think about how good Baker Mayfield was. Chris Godwin and Mike Evans missed, I believe, 13 games combined last season. Like, he was thrown to the Sterling Shepards of the world, and Jalen McMillan had to get good and quick.
Cade Otton, wide receiver too.
Cade Otton, exactly. But you think about now the emergence of Cade Otton. Mike Evans back healthy. Godwin hopefully is there for week one, but if not, Egbuka there, gives them some protection there. The emergence of McMillan. You mentioned Cade Otton. Bucky Irving has been great out of the backfield. And Baker is running a little bit more as well. Last year we saw it
Right.
just gets you 20 yards a game with his legs, which helps out. It's crazy, but since the start of 2023, he's the 6th best quarterback in fantasy on a points per game basis. And so adding a pro-ready wide receiver like Ibuka, I think, continues. He's somebody that makes the love list out of the NFL draft.
And he feels like one of those guys that you don't get as many spike weeks, right? Where it's like, man, like I had 7 points from Baker Mayfield this week, but hopefully I get 32 the next week. Once again, he's a floor quarterback, and depending on how you're building your roster, that could be a really, really big advantage.
Yep. Connor, to your point, just to give you a stat to literally say exactly that, 65% of his games since the start of the 2023 season, he's had at least 18 fantasy points. So just an incredibly high floor. Again, even though Chris Godwin was gone from more than the second half of the year. Evans missed 4 games, and he was banged up in a couple others. And so, it's really impressive, and it's awesome to see. We've interviewed Baker on this show, friend of the podcast, Baker Mayfield. Easy guy to root for.
Yep.
Just a great guy.
Absolutely. Also, a low-key thing with Baker is that with the nature of that Tampa Bay defense, it's kind of a perfect setup for fantasy where they have a great run defense perennially, which helps in terms of clock not being burned, but their pass defense has been terrible and gets burned, so they're in these shootouts where teams are scoring quickly, and then Baker's getting the ball back and getting a ton of volume. Let's take a look at others receiving votes, headlined by Connor's new quarterback, Justin Fields, Justin Herbert, also Drake May with the Patriots loading up, Bryce Young continuing his renaissance, CJ Stroud with a couple new weapons, and then Tyler Shuck as well, who it could be a starting quarterback. Who jumps out to you here, Matthew?
Well, listen, I think Justin Herbert, who, as we talked about, over the second half of last year started to throw more, adding Trey Harris, adding Lambert Smith and Gadsden as well. I think he's really interesting. Drake May very quietly had a decent fantasy year last year, and then adding Trevion Henderson, Kyle Williams, 2 offensive linemen. That's in their first 4 picks. Obviously signing Steph Diggs this offseason as well. Hopefully he's fully healthy, but I think Drake May is a winner there. And I'll say Bryce Young. Again, they're continuing to build in Carolina around him, going out and getting T-Mac, our buddy T-Mac there. Connor, your thoughts on Fields and what the Jets did this year?
Fields' best asset in fantasy is obviously what he does with his legs. Now they have a complete offensive line after taking Armand Membu 7th overall, and the second round pick was Mason Taylor, a jack-of-all-trades tight end. So the blocking is just going to be so much better for the Jets, and they are going to run Fields. They are going to scheme runs for Fields. They are going to tell him, hey, sometimes after your first read, giddy up and go. Fields, the most important thing we always say about him in fantasy is he's starting. He's going to start with the Jets. He's going to run a lot. That's why the arrow points up in this spot.
And by the way, and they improve the offensive line. They go out and get Mason Taylor, who we like a lot at tight end. They added some weapons for Fields, Fields as well. And listen, obviously Cam Ward's going to start day 1 for the Tennessee Titans. But when you look at the quarterback room in New Orleans, Tyler Shuck has a real chance to see meaningful action this year and is possibly their day 1 starter.
Yeah, there's a really good chance. With Derek Carr, we just can't figure out and think of all the injuries Derek Carr had last year, where if he comes into the season healthy, Tyler Shuck, it's going to be his time eventually, sooner rather than later. So we'll see what the status is with all the health questions around their wide receivers, but the offensive line is going to be a lot better with Kelvin Banks after taking Taliza Fuanga the first round the previous year. So there's worse situations that a rookie quarterback can walk into. And
we've certainly seen Kellen Moore offenses have a lot of fantasy success, whether it was Philadelphia, whether it was Dallas. The Chargers situation was a little weird, but for the most part, Kellen Moore offenses have produced fantasy goodness.
Indeed.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and RotoWorld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest RotoWorld fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.